finally the part I've been waiting on arrived. It took the best part of 2 weeks, but finally I can get the ducting finalised. Now, in the meantime, because obviously I couldn't put cob round any of the pipes because they'd all have to be redone, I did the cobbing around this section. So now, other than a little bit around the back here, all the structural cob around this has been completed. I didn't film any of it because really it's just slapping cob on, and I'm going to be doing enough of that through this section that I'll be able to do a video on how I do that. So there was no great need for it. I don't want to keep repeating myself. So yeah, next job is to disassemble all the pipes that have been put in temporarily and then cut. Right, let me show you. This part needs to go here basically, but not quite in that orientation, because you see those pipes are a bit pinched there. It's a bit wider at the other end and then it gets closer here, so I want to move that pipe that way slightly, which means I've got to scrape a little bit of cob out there, which I knew when I fitted it, but it's easily done. So then that'll get fitted kind of there. And because at this end I just went with what would work. See, that's overhanging. That needs to come back at least a foot, maybe a bit more. So I'll need to cut a section out of one of these long sections of duct, just so that, because you can see that's just been spliced in just to get it working. So the whole pipe will move this way. In fact, both of these pipes will, the whole end will move up. This has already been cut to length, but that's what that section there is the cut off. So this one will need to be cut down, and then that will fit. Actually, that pipe seems pretty decent length really, but we'll see. Actually, if that gets shortened and then moved that way slightly, we'll have to cut a little bit off. But yeah, with that fitting in there, finally I can get my levels and get it with a slight rise all the way up, and with a bit of cob around all that just to hold everything in place. That will start to dry out finally, and then I can get a little bit of cement around there, and I can start thinking about doing the front face. The light isn't great, but that's all in. So there's a gradual rise from there, all through this pipe, around that corner, back up that pipe, through the 45, and then up the vertical chimney. All the caps are where they need to be now. So we've got the two clear outs at the end here, and another one on here. So finally, that's the pipe work in. So I've got a bit of taping to do on all the joints. That shouldn't take too long, and then it's just starting to put cob and I'll use a more of a mortar kind of mix all around the pipes just to get it really packed in around them and filled in between them. And so I don't want to come too far this way until I start on the front face for the stone, but yeah, that is all in. With the delay that we had getting the last part and having to mess around and cobble things together just to get the heater working temporarily, the base load of cob, which is just thermal cob in the centre with a strip of structural cob across the front edge here, so you can see some straw sticking out. It was all beautifully dimpled and textured and perfect, but with having to step over it all so many times, I've basically compacted this front edge here, and you can see it's slumped in a few places. Now I've sprayed it down this morning to make it a bit softer, but you can see that's become a bit unstable just with me stepping onto the edge so many times. No matter how careful you are, it's bound to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chisel just maybe 4 or 5 inches across the front edge here and make a fairly stable flat platform, and then I'm going to use this cob here to build that up back up to its original level, but with a straight face on this edge, because you can see from there I've got a slope, which means that if I try building with rock here, it's going to try and tip, and if I just bulk up with material here, again that's going to want to slip down because it's a different set of material. It's not consolidated. So I'm not going to take too much off. I'm just going to try and make a little platform just to key it in with, thank you Quail, try and key it in with like an L-shaped in profile strip of structural cob to minimise it, because I don't want to be putting my hands into the clay too much today because it's really cold. It's just above freezing, and it's really uncomfortable. So I'll get as much of that off as I think I need, and I'll reserve that material. It can go back in as cob into the main bulk of the bench. But this is the most fiddly bit today. After this, it's into just packing in structural cob, packing in thermal cob, and that's a whole lot easier than what we're doing here. So there's no point filming me just chiseling stuff, so I'll come back and film a bit more after I've got that job done. So I've carved out that little shelf, and then I've splashed the whole lot with clay slip and the pipes. Just so that, thank you, so everything will stick to it. And now I'm just going to build a little platform of this stuff, and to stop it slumping too far forward, I'm just using this hawk, and I'm just packing it down onto that shelf. I'll have to make at least one other batch of this. I think I had to hack out quite a bit to get down to really good firm material once I'd started, but I pull that up, you can see that now is a nice little front edge, and I'll just bring it up to more or less the same as this floor height, and I'll do that all the way along before I start to build on top of it. That is the centre section, and across the back there, brought pretty much the height at the top of the pipes. Now I'm going to work on the front wall. While this is still wet, I'm going to use the stone I've got and some mortar to set up this front wall and backfill in below the pipes to bring it up to more or less the same sort of height, so all of that can dry off together as a single slab. And these are the stones that I've got. Now, Caithness stone is lovely slabs, makes really good pavers, but yeah, this is much more attractive for a stone facade. So these are from Sutherland out west, so I've got plenty of them for it, and I've got a bit more there as well, and a few others stashed away at the back of the place as well. So I'm going to try and make a nice interesting front face on it. You can see it's granite with interesting strips of quartz and things like that through, so it should look quite good. There's been a delay of about a month or so. I was working over Christmas, and yeah, it wasn't going to happen. I was working, long hours, and yeah, just with being off the croft all day, it wasn't going to happen. But before Christmas, I managed to get the next row of stone in. So you can see all of that. Now, unlike pointing with conventional cement mortars, that just scrapes off. So when it all squishes out under the stones and so on, that's not a problem. When it's all set up, I can just come through and just scrape it all back nice and neat, and do a little bit of pointing with its still gaps need filling, and call it good. It'll not always look like that. And of course, you can see with this clay and so on run down the front of the stones, they're all going to need really washing down, scrubbing, and bringing it up nice. And at that point, the whole lot will be oiled, and that's when we'll really start to see the colours in the stone, like when they were wet outside. At the moment they look fairly plain, but they're actually really pretty stones. So my job for today is first off to make a load of thermal cob, which will just be the clay with just some aggregate in it, and I'll fill in this section here as much as I can, because I want to get it up over the pipes, because at the moment, even though it's still by far the best heating system we've ever had, we're not getting the full efficiency. We're still going through quite a bit of wood, because of course we're radiating so much heat through the top of the pipes. It's just, yeah, it's radiating into the room instantly rather than giving us the slow heat effect. So I'm going to fill that section in there, and then I'm going to mount another load of cob on top of that to be put on this later, because across the back there is actually the lowest point. You can see the cob is virtually up to the point of the retaining wall there, whereas in the front here I've got an entire stone's height difference apart from that little bit there, because that needed a bit more reinforcing with structural cob last time I worked on it. So yeah, my objective today is to get a load of just rough thermal cob on above the pipes, basically, to start giving me the real benefit of that. And then hopefully before the sun goes down I'll have time enough to set up a new batch of just like a mortar, so I can put another course onto the back of that, and then use that mortar with a little bit of fibre added to it just to finish the little bit of structural cob I need to do here, and a little bit across the back there, because you can see where I've started to fill it up around these. Now these are going to stay exposed, but they will be slightly recessed. So this stone here is still loose. You can see that's been mortared in. I need to put another bed of mortar down, put that rock on, and just bring that up slightly. And then I've got that long stone there to add something like a lintel just to go above here. but it'll be at this kind of level, so it'll be, you know, bringing the whole thing proud of these pipes. So by the time these have got little decorative handles on, little knobs on them, yeah, they're not going to be kicking them walking past and so on. So yeah, it's just, yeah, where there is a little bit of cob on top of the pipes, it gets really warm really fast. So all Christmas I've been burning without the mass in and desperate to get the mass on top of it. So the good news is, of course, that all the cob that's already there is really bone dry already. So my first job is going to have to be to wet all this down with clay slip, just so I can get a good bond and start building it up, which I'm not going to do a huge amount of filming. In a later video I'll show the two types of cob and how we work it out and so on, but I'll show that when the bench is virtually complete. It'll be a lot easier, because at the moment I'm pretty much against the clock trying to get this finished before everything freezes up for, you know, deepest part of winter. And at that point, pickaxing clay out of the ground and mixing it and stuff in the driveway is just going to be impossible, you know, because everything will be frozen. So yeah, the race is on really to get it all done to the point that I can get it finished indoors, you know, with the plastering and so on. But I can do that, but I need to get this cob in first. Right, time to crack on. So that's the back wall at its final height. There's a little bit of lower spot here, but that's fine. It's going to have a layer of cob on it yet before the slabs go onto it anyway. So yeah, that back wall there is exactly level with the top of this stone here, which is, I mean, virtually perfectly exactly in line with it. And that's the high spot of this in the front here. So this will all need a thin layer of cob just to bring it all up to the same level as the slabs go in. But basically that's the void now ready for putting in the big bulk load of cob that's going to really give us the thermal mass effect and save us a bundle of money. This end around the pipes, I've going to go a slightly different route. So I'm only going to pull the cob about as far as here, and then it'll get stepped up a couple of times. So I've got a fairly small pull to go into the end here to bring that up. But the reason I'm doing that is that's going to have a certain amount of fibre in it, so more like a structural cob, so I can put the armrest up and keep it fairly strong, so it'll be keyed into all of this below, including a section that will go underneath the stone slab that's going to go on here, because obviously I want the armrest to go, you know, the other side of that slab. So that's pretty much it now. It's just into, you know, digging the last of the cob, getting that all done. That's the main section of slab in and dried off. You can see it's pretty much up to height at the back there. So I've got a big gap there that still has to be done. I'll come to that in a minute. And I've got a section here that's like a little rebated section that runs all the way along here. That's because that's where an armrest is going, and that's the job I'm starting today. But this is going to be on the end of the armrest, so that'll form the nice structural stone bit on the end, just to make it look quite nice. So you can see that pretty much fits down inside that pit. That's all get set on a little bed of cob, but I'm not dealing with this one today. I'm dealing with this end. Now I've put some packing material of just crumpled up paper and then some just some plastic over the top of the pipes, so I can use formwork to build up the cob here, because the thing is, that's as far as the bench could normally come. Well, I want it to come out further than that, so I'm going to use cob because it's structural. I'm going to bring it out and have a slightly cantilevered arm that'll come out and then up, because I've got the height difference between the pipes and the section that it's come up to there across the back. That's about 7 to 8 inches. So because I've left all of this clear, I can really get this cob section really keyed in underneath that, and especially with the slabs going across here as well. Big stone slabs are going to go on top of this, so all of that will be really keyed into one big section that can cope with being cantilevered out a little bit. It'll still be really keyed into all the rest of it and all the supporting stonework, but because it's all been done as one piece, it'll hold much more strongly. And this section also is going to have fibre in it. It's going to, because all this is just thermal cob, so there's no straw, there's no fibre in it. This section will, because it's the fact it's coming out as far as it is. I'm going to have fibre through it just to give it some tensile strength. You don't usually want to use too much of it because it can be an insulator, and we want this section to absorb as much heat as possible, of course, from the ducting. But it's because it's going to come out a little bit, I'm going to give it that, you know, little bit of fibre. And it'll increase in fibre content as it comes up because it gets, it'll get thinner towards the top edge here. So yeah, that's the mass heater as far as it's come. I mean, it's pretty well there really. It just needs the armrests going in, which is this next section, then the slabs going on, and then once it's all dried off, the whole lot will need plastering, and then that's quite a big job, but it's pretty much there. And then we're into things like putting floor trim back and packing insulation, and also of course reskinning that back wall. I've also got a plan in place for doing this whole section of wall here, but we'll come to that when we get into this armrest, because this is the job for today. That's that section pretty much done. You can see it's not quite up to the same height, there's a bit of a height difference there, but that's all ready to be keyed in, ready for the next layer. And this section here, you can see, is actually cantilevered out, so that's supported only by being tied in with the cob into this section here, because that was a big void there, so it should be strong enough. I've just got this support structure just in while it was being built. That'll be coming out at some point, because today I'm going to be putting the next section on to bring it up to the final height that I want. And I've got on this end here, got a porcupine into the wall, so that's got something that it can key into, and that'll give a lot of support for this arm, because it hasn't got any support directly underneath it. Just these bricks are just stacked just to support this board. That's a bit of formwork. The actual section itself, you can see, is back under here, so that's the stone support, and then this board comes up at a bit of an angle, and then this is just a single monolithic piece of cob that goes back into the bench here, so it should be strong enough. But if I build this up any higher, it's going to be easy to lever and cause a fracture down here, so it's going to be keyed into this. And I've also put on a nice bit of driftwood onto the end here that goes all the way up to the ceiling. That's got a nice few bits that I can hang bits off and so on, but also once this has got the wood cladding that's going onto it, it'll look quite nice. This will just be oiled up after a bit of a sand, but I've also got a couple of screws into the bottom of that, so I can key into that as well. So this entire cob slab will be tied into this bit of wood here, which is also tied into this upright, but also the cob will as well. So by the end of today, that should be done. But it's been a while since I filmed, because I've also done this arm. So you can see that great big stone I wanted to incorporate is in the end here. And it doesn't look particularly pretty at the minute because it needs a clean. You can see it's got clay slip and stuff on, but once it's all been washed down and oiled, that'll be fine. And you can see that that's all anchored in across the whole load, and then it comes across, widens out and goes up into that slab there. And I've actually made that a really big solid piece there, just so that I can extract a bit more heat from the upright pipe as it goes up. And I've done a smaller version of that around this side just in, and I've started coming up, and you see I've left that so I can key into the next section as it comes up, because when I make batches of cob, this is just where I put the surplus cob currently. I'm not going to finish this section in here with this batch of construction, because this is going to have a whole load of cob construction put into it, and I want to key that into this. That's going to be left unfinished, but from this point on, that's where I'm going to get all the plastering done. So yeah, the bench is really coming together. So after this job today, and I've got that all keyed in, the next job then will be to cut the stone slabs that are going to go onto this section here, and they'll be cantilevered out about 3 inches or so, so you can get your heels under yourself when you're standing up, and that'll be the top slab for this whole bench. And of course, because that'll be tucked up right against that wooden edge there, that gap there will be filled in by the slab going up tight up against it, which then isolates the lounge from the bathroom again, because at the moment I've still got slabs of foam just up against it to give a bit of privacy in the bathroom, but it's not ideal. And with them boards out then this mass will be heating the bathroom through that gap. But yeah, first things first, got to get this cob done. That's all the cob done. So I've finished this arm here, and then I've also completed this one here. It's been yeah, cantilevered out over the edge. I've still got the support structure in place. I need to take that out, but while it's been drying I've just left it all in place. It hasn't been doing any supporting for a while. It's just to stop people banging into it while it's still been setting up. And then on this side I've tied into a really nice piece of driftwood, and again that has got, you know, spikes and screws and stuff to proper key into the cob, and that is, you know, completely anchored in, because don't forget that's where the electrics were originally, was back behind this ball here. So I need to fill in this section here and let the electrics come back here, and then this will give me somewhere that I can hang things like charger cables and things like that. And then yeah, it's a nice bit of driftwood. So next job now is to cut and fit the slab tops. That'll be what we actually sit on, and then the plastering. But first things first, slabs.